Hey everyone, this is Lynn Bartown, and you are listening to the Apex Hour on KSUU Thunder 91.1. In this show, you get more personal time with the guests who visit Southern Utah University from all over, learning more about their stories and opinions beyond their presentations on stage. We will also give you some new music to listen to and hope to turn you on to some new sounds and new genres. You can find us here every Thursday at 3 p.m. or on the web at scu.edu/apex. But for now, welcome to this week's show here on Thunder 91.1. Okay, well, welcome. Here you are with the Apex Hour. This is Thursday. It's 3 p.m. You're listening to KSUU Thunder 91.1. And we have just been having a beautiful sense of inspiration today. And I couldn't be happier that I have my guest here in the studio, Zainab Salbi. Welcome to KSUU and welcome to the radio show.
Thank you. What a pleasure. Thank you very much.
We have been following your work here on campus for some time now, and we so enjoyed your talk this morning. And I just have to share with our listeners just this beautiful moment that we had walking in. We were stopped by a young man who's from the Congo who is studying here for just 3 months and was particularly taken by your talk. But I'm sure things like that happen to you all the time.
Sometimes, yes.
Well, one of the things I'd like to start by talking about on the show is we just can sort of free form and do a lot of different things. You were just speaking about the importance of a value-driven lifestyle. And you talked about it this morning, and we were just talking about it when we were talking about your gift. And can you talk a little bit to our listeners about that and what that means to you and how you feel about it?
Well, I mean, what I mean is, as an activist and a women's rights person and all of these things, I always used to preach about values. People should do this and that and all of these things. And it's like what I call self-righteous values.
Right.
And I thought of myself as this wonderful person and I'm right and they're wrong and all of these things until I actually came to realize that really, I need to look into myself and say, am I consistent between what I'm speaking and what I'm doing? Because it's so easy, for example, to speak about women's rights, and freedom and all of these things and my right. But then in the meantime, here I am buying clothes without asking who made it. Did you treat the person who made it well? Were they in a dungeon in some place, in a dark place, or were they actually paid livable wages, not only minimum wages, livable wages in good working conditions? For example, that's just an example. And I realized, no, I lived a lifetime talking about women's rights and demonstrating all of that, but I actually was buying clothes that's just a simple example, right? So buying clothes without consciousness about it. And this is my inconsistencies. I think all of us have this inconsistencies within our lives. We preach something, but we don't ask ourselves, are we really, really doing what we're preaching, right? So if you're against, for example, prejudice, are you being prejudiced against someone who is not agreeing with your values or selves? It's so constantly. So I returned the question. I embarked upon my life, trying to change the world. And traveled the world and traveled conflict areas from Congo to Afghanistan and Iraq and Rwanda and all of that, only to realize I need to change myself as well. That changing the world, it entails me really changing the world, not going and talking about it. And so now what I call about value-driven lifestyle, it means I really go I love clothes. So when I go shopping, I ask the person who's selling, it's like, can you tell me if how the person who made it got paid, or what's your ethical values? What your environmental practice? Most of the times people don't understand what I'm talking about. And I was like, well, can you call your manager? And then I make a point. And usually if I feel then if the if the corporations know we're asking, they will adjust to us.
Yes.
We feel that we're victims of all these other people who are making decisions. I'm saying we own it. We take control of our own power and we make changes in our lives. And whether it's governments or whether it's corporations or whether the big bosses or whatever it is, they will actually adjust because they want our business and they want our voice. So instead of wanting to change the world, change yourself and the world shall change around you.
I love that. And even with just the fashion thing, I mean, you just start asking questions.
I really do.
That's the way to go. Because I'm thinking, I love fashion.
Me too. I really do.
And so I'm thinking, how can I implement this a little bit, and if it's that, maybe, well, I can ask questions. I mean, anybody can ask questions.
Absolutely. And then I started researching, right? And so, well, what are the fashion designs that are more environmentally conscious? Now, it is impossible that any brand that is 100% ethical, but there are brands who are trying. Mm-hmm. And when they see that there is a positive feedback from the customers, it gives them even more incentives and it brings other brands in it, So now I have like this whole genre of brands that I have to research and I have stores in where I am and I know that this store actually has really good values and this store and then sometimes it's not 100% process, by the way.
Of course.
But now before I just jump and buy, I really ask myself, I really, really, really do ask, like, is this a loving thing to do? Yeah. I know I really want this shirt, but can I live without it if it's not ethical? Yeah. Can I get away with it? Is that just an accessory that I really want out of my own greed in this moment? Or do I need the discipline of saying, no, I really want something ethical? And that questioning of myself, it made me actually become more minimalistic, more aware of how I spend my money, more, conscious, and it actually became much better for me financially as well, because now I ask myself, do I really need to do that or not?
You talked in your talk today about a lot about that, about the asking yourself, is this something done out of love or does it produce that love and all the compassion? And so you really let that go into all areas of your life. And it has sort of brought about at least materially, a little bit more of that minimalist outlook, it seems.
It has. I mean, if I started my life thinking that, dividing the world, they are good. I mean, they're bad. I'm good. Mm-hmm. They are, this culture is oppressive culture. This culture is free culture. This culture is that culture is like, I divided the world into good and bad, right? And then, then I realized over time that the people who I thought of as good, let's say my community or some, enlightened group of people, actually they hurt me as well. Mm-hmm. And there were bad things there as well. And it devastated me because I idealized I idealized this committee as perfect and this committee as imperfect. This person is perfect and this person is bad, right? And then I realized over time that the good, the bad, and the ugly is actually everywhere. That is a very simplistic division of the world as good and bad, or of my reality of people. And more importantly, which the good, the bad, and the ugly is in myself. And I moved from being judgmental of others to actually questioning myself. And that questioning made me more compassionate person of the others that I don't agree with, actually. It's like, it's not easy to implement these values. And it made me more patient in engaging in dialogue and in ways that I no longer label people as, racist or bigots or sexist or whatever. I really don't. Like now I was like, what is the reason behind your behavior? And explaining to them how it makes me feel rather than labeling them, because that doesn't result in anything. It results in dividing us rather than bridging us. Yeah. And so it's just a shift of mindset where I needed to own my actions and inactions first, see the good and the bad and the ugly in me. And that helped me see the good and the bad and the ugly in the complexities of other people around me and our own humanity and our own earth. But that made me believing much more that we actually can have dialogues and build bridges of communication between us. It's no longer a theoretical discussion. It's now a very real one for me.
In that, we touched on this a little bit at lunch. You talked about that realization and that understanding of what you may have perceived before as bad. And we sort of talked, in fact, Court, who works with Apex, was talking about activism. And I know that in fact, in your new book, I ran across the part where you recognize yourself as an activist, and you have been recognized as an activist. How do you feel about that term? Is that term still something that you connect with? Or now that you've sort of gone through this transformation, as you mentioned, to sort of understand the complexities of it more, do you prefer not to use activism, but more humanitarian? I mean, does it have a different meaning for you now? What do you think?
So I'm not into labels. I really don't care about them. I call myself an activist, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me at all. But my activism changed, and my call out for activists is to also reflect on what's the meaning of activism. If it's 2.0 or 3.0, or I don't know if we are in the 4.0 generation. I don't know. But the point is, before I used to implement my activism by demonstrating and carrying my bullhorn and chanting slogans and all of these things. Now I still join demonstrations, just for the records, if needed. So I don't stop that, but it came out of a self-righteous and self-anger aspect of me. Like, I am right and you are wrong and I'm demonstrating against you. And when I started implementing these issues, like asking myself, am I part of this? And I'll give you an example about that. For example, I always preach forgiveness. And those who did not believe in forgiveness, I always thought, like, what backward people they are, what horrible people they are. They don't believe in forgiveness. And so I thought of myself as such a good person because I believe in forgiveness, and they are such bad people because they don't really believe in forgiveness. Until, to be very, very honest, I mean, it's a very simple thing. A boyfriend broke my heart and I just couldn't forgive him. And, I was hurt. I really was hurt. And I just was more angry at him than forgiveness was the last thing on my mind. And then I can't. Then I realized, I'm talking about the value that I don't even know how to implement in my life. I've been giving speeches about forgiveness, but I've never forgiven anybody in my life. And then I had to ask myself, I need to learn the meaning of forgiveness in my heart. And I had to ask myself, have I betrayed myself? And I understood the part of me that has betrayed me, and actually understand, what is it coming from? It came from a very insecure place in me, wanting to be loved. So I felt bad for her and thus forgave her.
Yeah.
And then I could forgive him so easily right now. Like, I forgave him a long time ago. But now when I talk about political forgiveness between right and left, black and white, Hutu and Tutsi, this ethnic group and that ethnic group, I actually really, for me, it's a meaningful one in my body. So I call my activism now is coming out of the core of my spine rather than the wideness of my chest. It's no longer the slogans, is much more the humbleness of, I really understand how hard it is to forgive, but it is possible. And I really came to believe that we can forgive even when not asked for forgiveness.
That's beautiful. I just love that. I love that as you say, your call to activism has taken that transformation and how you're recognizing it and putting it out there. So, well, in this show, I'm in love with world music. And so it's time for our first musical break. All day we've been listening to this great playlist on Spotify called Woman's World. There's 6 degrees of global women in music. So it's a great playlist. And what drew it to me is that one of my favorite Brazilian female artists is on there, Seiyu, and we're going to listen to a song of hers called Comadi. This is the Apex Hour, KSUU, Thunder 91.1.
Ponta de lança, às vezes se amuar com tamanha herança. Ponta de lança, às vezes se amuar com tamanha herança. de lança. Às vezes se amuar com tamanha herança. Yeah, 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 yeah. Eu li um soneto de amor que as lágrimas que tu não chora, yeah, 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 se escondem num rio dentro de tu. A comadre é ponta de lança. Às vezes se amuar com tamanha herança.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. You're listening to the Apex Hour, KSUU, Thunder 91.1. We are here in the studio with Zainab Salbi. Welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Yay. The next thing that I'd love to get into is your writing. We've been celebrating your newest book, which is Freedom is an Inside Job. And we were so lucky to get some advance copies. The official release date is, I think, next week, right?
Yes, October 2nd.
October 2nd. We love October. October 2nd. And so I've already dug into it. We just received it maybe 48 hours ago, and I've just been enjoying it so much.
Thank you.
And I really would encourage everyone listening to get it. Again, it's called Freedom is an Inside Job. Before we get into the specifics of this book, I'd love you to tell me a little bit about your writing process. If you don't mind, I know a lot of our students listen and we have a lot of aspiring writers. What is that process like for you? Just maybe walk me through it a little bit.
Well, it has 3 phases, I would say. So the first phase is just me writing. and
That's the first phase.
Well, yeah, that means I'm not talking about my life experience, but I'm just honestly, sometimes I close my eyes and I open the computer and I just type what I really want to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so
just a
cool.
pouring of thoughts and emotions and whatever it is, just like without inhibition, just writing, right?
I love
have
it.
some good music on always helps me to have music. It inspires me. It lifts me up. It triggers the emotions. And so then that's phase 1.
Okay.
It's just dumping, of everything out there. And the second phase is then I look at that and then I was like, okay, let's see what I can keep, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what goes in here, what it doesn't go in here. And I start working on organizing it basically.
Okay.
So, but that's how it works. I'm a chaotic person and I don't like structure. So that's for me, works for me.
Yeah.
Some people like to start with structure first,
Yeah.
which is, and now I'm not saying I don't have structure. I want to say this point. But to get me to this point, I actually just let myself free-flowing experience. And from there, because I don't want to be inhibited and get stuck in the structure. So I say I want to make point X. I let myself express anything I want. And then I started looking, I was like, okay, this goes in this section. This goes in this section. This point goes in this section. And so that's the next phase when it starts taking a more organized shape in a way, you know, but it's not that I'm saying that there's no organized shape at the beginning. It's just, I let myself loose and not be restricted.
It's very organic.
Very organic.
That's beautiful.
And from the organic, I then start organizing it and becoming more disciplined about it. And the third process is even polishing it more, but, you know, which is, you know, making the point clearer, you know, honing it down, giving more examples, all of these things. But what I discovered is that I need to have space between them.
Oh.
So I can't do it all. Like, let's say in each phase, I do it. I need to leave. I need to leave and go and do something else. Sometimes it's about just going and exercising for an hour. Sometimes it's reading a book, cooking, whatever it is, and then coming back to it. But it's always, I need a break in between. Sometimes I give myself a few days of break just so I can look at something else and then come back to it, you know, so that impacting you. The most important thing, I think that is weird, but it's real for me, is when I'm writing, I can't hear other people's voice. You know, I actually really go into an isolated phase in which I just stay at my place and I'm just in myself. And I can stay like days alone.
Wow.
You know, I can't, sometimes people want to talk with me over the phone for something else. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm just in this very inner process that I just cannot, you know, in all my books. Yeah. You know, I would like lock myself in my room and not lock myself, but I mean like hide there and just isolate myself from the world. And I'm just going inward completely before then I can come outward out of it. Give myself break, then go back into the inward process. And that break helps me develop what I'm trying to articulate even better.
That's amazing. And are you also a journalist, a journal writer, like a diary writer? I mean, is that something that you do you do this when you're writing for your books and larger projects, but do you also do it on a regular basis for in just normal day-to-day work as well? Do you do that stream of conscious writing, or is that mostly reserved for the book writing process for you? I
used to do the stream of conscious writing on a regular basis. Now I do it only when I feel like it. Because not every day I have some conscious. Some days I'm just numb. Like my day is just like, I mean, like there's my days where my brain is like, like there's nothing going on.
I know that feeling very well.
So there's nothing to write about in such days, you know. So I let myself until I'm ready to write, and then I do. I just write it and let it, and I learned that I actually store everything. And that's what's creativity. I mean, like, I never thought of myself as a poet, for example, ever. And I happen to know Alice Walker, which was like, she's the poet. I'm not, absolutely not. And then one day I was just literally meditating and just painting and just like, I never even aspired to be a poet, right? But I was just meditating and being and painting, and suddenly a line started going in my head.
Wow.
And I just started writing it. And then I called Alice and I was like, I'm shy to tell you this, but like, is this poetry? Is that okay? And she's like, yes, keep going. So if you tell me to write a poem now, I cannot. But sometimes I'm doing something fun, and it comes. So I know I'm a big believer that we need, for any creative person, whether you're a writer, a musician, any artist, the free flowing, the creativity, the juiciness, they're not being stuck that I have to deliver that. Actually, the playfulness, the rest, all of that, living life is part of the sadness. Oh, it brings a lot of creativity.
Yes.
So now, like, I need these things, especially sadness. It's funny. It's like when I'm like, and there's happy phases or I'm just happy. I was like, oh, I really need some sadness here. There's not creativity in here. So it's like, you let yourself feel all of it in order for that juicy stuff to come out.
Ah, that's beautiful. I think that you mentioned in when you were talking just now, meditating, and I'd love to get into, I want to get back to the book, but I'd love to get into a little bit about that. I think that meditation is important in your life. I think I've heard in maybe another interview where you spoke about meditation and daily ritual and maybe even yoga or these kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about that inward work and how that works for you and all that.
Well, I do all of these things, but I also, as I said, I'm like not a routine kind of person. So I do them and I drop them and I do them and I drop them. And I learned the following. Yeah. Oh, what I can tell you is that I used to create spaces for what I call self-care. So however you self-care. So sometimes there are years in which my self-care is an hour at the gym. Right. And sometimes my year of self-care is yoga and meditation.
Oh, okay.
So I change the patterns basically, but there must be a Zainab time every day that is mine and no one can take it away from me. Because this is the biggest thing I learned in the process of writing Freedom is an Inside Job, that I am the cake of my happiness. Ooh. No one can give it to me and no one can take it away from me. People in my life are the cream. There's chocolate cream, there's vanilla, there's strawberry. They make myself indeed happier or more delicious cake. Yeah. And they can, if they go, it's less delicious cake, but the cake is me.
Oh,
it's like it changed my own perception. But there has to be a cake time every day, which is only me. And that rotated. So I used to take retreats and now used to take classes and sometimes I don't. So I learned that as long as I have this, I allow myself time to think and do nothing. And that nothingness, which is meditation, basically, could come in any shape, way, or form. However, whatever your hobby is, if you're painting for 4 hours, that is the nothing, like you're not thinking. Sometimes I live in New York, so there's a lot of transportation involved in the car or in the bus or in the subway. I don't check my phone anymore. I allow for the nothing. Because I came to the conclusion the people I admire the most in my life, whether it's Nelson Mandela or Gandhi, there is a huge period of their lives where they did nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it. Mandela, 27 years in prison of nothing. No accomplishments, Gandhi used to spin cotton for 6 hours a day. That was his meditation.
Oh.
Nothing. Is where you allow your brain to not think and to rest. And whether it is breathing in and out in a car ride or whether it is doing nothing, for whatever hours, I no longer judge myself because we're living in a very judgmental society. How much you accomplish? What have you done? Even if you sleep 8 hours, you're judged actually. That's like, oh, I sleep only 6 hours. It's like, I tell you, I need 9 hours of sleep in here to really be happy, So there's like, we're always competing. It's like, I accomplished this. And the truth is you don't. Yeah. You don't so I give permission for myself to do what I really need to do and not judge myself. Am I accomplishing that? At the end of the day, I realize I'm still doing. It's just the pattern of it is not what the society tells me to do it. I'm just doing it. I'm probably for you, you probably see me as an accomplished person. I don't know.
Definitely.
Well, sometimes I have days in which I'm just hiking and doing nothing. It doesn't stop me for accomplishing a lot of things.
I find that to be so refreshing. I definitely find that to be true with myself. And it's so great to hear that in somebody else, especially in today's world where, as you said, it's all about accomplishing how much have we accomplished, blah, 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 all these kinds of things. But I sort of nicknamed it my staring at the walls time, whatever that means. It could be actually staring at the walls, or it could be many other things. But I sort of need that. I think, like you, I think people tend to see me as like, oh, going all the time, but it's really not that. And so to hear you also validate that, not only just for me, but for our listeners too, I think that that's really special.
That's where creativity, that's where magic happens. And it doesn't have to be you, whether you're an author, whatever, even if you're studying business or math, that's every person out there who've done something in the world, they allow that playful time.
Exactly.
And the rest time. And that's where magic does happen.
Oh, I love that. Well, it's time for another song. We're going to dig into this playlist a little bit more. Let's see. We're going to take a listen to a song called Spring Arrives. And the artist is Azam Ali. And again, this is from that Women's World playlist. And you're listening to the Apex Hour, KSUU Thunder 91.1. Okay, well, welcome back to the Apex Hour. We were talking here with Zainab Salbi about her new book, Freedom is an Inside Job. And I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit more about the book. I think we've sort of been talking the topics of the book, but if you wanted to go into a little bit more detail, I know it's the week before it's coming out, and so hopefully we'll inspire some people to check it out. But tell us a little bit more about what this particular book is about.
Well, you know what? It started with me meeting a woman in Congo. And she said, she told me about the horrible story she's gone through, gang raped of her and her daughters. And at one point she looked at me and she said, I never told anybody but you my story.
Wow.
So I tell her, I was like, so look, I'm a storyteller. Which I tell other women's stories. Should I keep yours a secret? So she looks at me and she said, if I can tell my whole story to the entire world, I would. So other women would not have to go through what I have gone through. Oh. But I can't. You can. You go ahead and tell the story. Now that really was the most humbling moment in my life, because I realized I've been claiming I'm a women's rights activist, talking about other women, and like we talk about her stories easily, but I really never owned what she's trying to say, which is a connection between an individual story and the collective story.
Right.
That if I break my silence, maybe other women would be spared from the pain I went through. And I realized even though I'm the humanitarian who is helping her and she's the poor woman I'm helping, she actually has much more courage and consciousness than I did. And I was hiding behind the victim story, the other women's stories.
I see.
So I realized I actually no longer can talk about being women's rights or valuing these values if I actually don't own my own voice. So it started with telling my own story and breaking with my own silence about issues that happened in my life, you know, from whatever, my memoir, knowing Saddam Hussein, being raped, all of these things. And as I start telling the story, you know, it's sort of felt like there was a dark stone in my chest of anxiety.
Wow.
When I spoke my truth, it sort of dissolved and it became a crystal. So I was like, oh, this feels great. This telling the truth feels really good. And I actually was like, I was keeping myself in my fear. I was the fear and I was the prison guard that keeps it as well. So then I was like, oh, so where am I not in truth in my life? So I started looking at my relationships. And I was like, and I vet through them. I'm truthful in here. This is no longer in my truth. I started looking at my work and saying, am I in truth in my life? And then I started looking into my own history, like my own behavior towards other people, and start saying, am I in truth in my life? And so it became an inward journey. And every time I go about it, it's hard. I struggle. I care. I cry. I'm working on myself, but then I come out freer, happier, stronger. So my line became like the taste of freedom. The journey of freedom is actually hard. But the taste of freedom is so delicious that it is actually worth going through that hard journey. And so then I kept on looking in myself, and myself is an activist, and myself is someone who travels around the world to help and care about women's rights all over the world. And then it's like, so that it became from an outward value to an inward value to then an outward value. So now I do talk about forgiveness and beauty and, you know, success, but these notions got redefined in the process, you know, from an inward journey and then outward. So that's what the book is about, is that if we really want to live, if you, whoever you are, want to really be happy and see happiness and see a world in peace, then find the peace inside you. Yeah. If you really want to have a fair and just world, then make sure that you are living a just and fair life inside you. This is a relationship between you and you, and then you and the relationships right in front of you, right? So it moved from this mega concept to a very personal concept. And then now I still work in the world.
Yeah.
But my views and my values and my engagement with people who I don't agree with, whatever, has become much more compassionate and much different. But it's different. So one story is I used to think I'm ugly. And then I tried to put the makeup and the clothes and all to hide. And then the only way I could actually understand that I was beautiful was through a very simple meditation exercise that a woman showed me to meditate in front of my bathroom mirror. It's no exotic places or exotic clothes.
Yeah,
Finally, I realized, I'm darn beautiful. But it took decades of my life to realize I'm beautiful, and it's not some retreat. It's my bathroom mirror that helped me do that. And I talk about these things in the book.
I see. I can't wait to read the rest of it. I was only able to get, a partial way through it. But when you started to do this process and realize that you wanted to do this process, start this journey of questioning or redefining, I mean, how did you deal with the fear of what you might come up against? Because I mean, I would say they think that for many people would fight that and not be strong enough to sort of say, I'm not ready to really look at what I'm doing wrong in order to see the good. I mean, because you almost have to do that, right? You're saying you kind of have to acknowledge your own either hypocrisy or this or complicit, whatever behavior in order to then find this deeper happiness. How did you deal with, was it scary?
So it is scary, but here's the thing. If you don't deal with it, it comes and haunts you anyway. To quote Wilma Mankiller, an indigenous woman who said, it's like you have a dark horse and a light horse in the carriage of your life. If you only put the leash on the light horse, the good horse that is, it's not that the dark horse is not there. The dark horse is still in the carriage. It's still leading. It's just you don't have control over it. So it's constantly and it takes a turn, and it's like, oh my God, did my anger just show up? Oh my God, did my jealousy just show up? Oh, my insecurity just show up. And then you just dump it because you're too embarrassed and it's too hard to look at it. So you just dump it and cover it up, and you're like, la, 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 just to avoid it.
Yeah.
I'm saying change the process because it's going to hijack you constantly if you're not going to take control over it. So yes, putting the leash on the dark horse is a hard process because the dark horse is disobedient and has insecurity, all that, right? Yeah. But and then you have to actually acknowledge that there is a dark horse in your carriage also. That's really hard. But it changes your life. It's basically now you have the leash on both your dark horse and your, light horse. And then you're in control of your darkness. So it's not like there's no darkness. It's not that I'm impatient, let's say, or have anger issue or whatever. It's I do. It's now I'm like, oh, here it is coming again. Okay, sorry. And no others can no longer manipulate me or hijack me because they use my own insecurity against me. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So what I'm saying is you have a choice. Yeah. You can preemptively do the work and get a charge of your own life, the good part and the bad part, because you'll understand the bad part is not bad. You actually just need to learn how to control it and work with it, right? Yeah. But it's not unless if you want to kill people, that's different, but that you have to really, I don't know, you should do something. But all of us have bad characters in us. So I was like, but these sometimes it's helpful. Yeah. If you're in charge of it. Yeah. It's not helpful when it's in charge of you. Mm-hmm. So if you don't do it because it's too hard, it's going to haunt you. If it's not in your 20s, then in your 30s. If it's not in your 30s, then in your 40s. If not in your 40s, then in your 70s. And you will still deal with it. And I have seen enough people in my life that they're still dealing with it in their 80s because they couldn't deal with it in their 20s. So I'm just saying, be proactive, go and do the work. It is actually worth it. It will help all your relationships and your career and your life. And don't shy away from looking at fear in the eyes. When you look at fear, whatever you're afraid of, when you look at it in the eyes, you will see you can go out in the other direction.
I love it. Where did you say that dark horse, white light horse came from? Because
Wilma Mankiller. It's an indigenous woman who died a few years ago. I don't know which tribe she's from actually, but that's where I borrowed the concept from.
That's a beautiful concept I hadn't heard before, and I love it. I love the imagery. I love what it represents. That's amazing. Another thing along these lines that you had said that I had heard somewhere was, which I really like, that you had said by acknowledging some of that darker side, then you can actually use that as a help to somebody else, because then you can recognize those things in other people and say, yes, I understand that. I've experienced that. And so it actually helps you get more compassionate in other ways.
Well, so we live in a society where we only talk about happiness and perfection. Mm-hmm. And I have it all. I mean, it's like, it's all good, you know,
right.
And I don't know anybody in my life where it's all good. I just don't know. So if you know, please let me know. Yeah. I would love to talk with them and learn. But it's not, there are good days, there are bad days, there are sad days, there are, angry days, there are days in which I just want to cry, and there are days in which I am happy and I'm on the top of my mountain. The difference is, before I would only put values on the happy days. And then when I see someone happy and I'm not happy, I may be so, especially social media does that to us because we only put the happy pictures in, and I'm just like, oh, that does make one feel lonely actually, because you're like, I'm not having what this person is having, right? And I'm like, as a person who is active in social media, people look at me and they say this. So it's sort of, what I'm saying is that I changed my relationship. I just like, now when I have a sad day, for example, I don't resist it. I just like, okay, I'm having a sad day. Mm-hmm. And I don't brush it on the side. I actually learn myself to feel it. Okay. Or less loneliness is a good one, I let myself feel loneliness. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I'm very lonely. I'm feeling very lonely. And I just get even choky talking about it, And so I let myself, and I was like living my life of how loneliness, and as I said, understanding the feeling in my muscles and my heart and all of it. And then over a week, it goes. I'm not lonely.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is not so bad, actually. Right. This is actually really good. I don't mind it. It's really good. And then, Lord and behold, you're no longer lonely and people come in your life and all of these things. The only difference is that instead of panicking about that negative feeling, I took it on. And taking it on, you actually learn about it. And that learning not only liberates you from its fear, but it also, next time I see someone who's lonely or someone who's insecure or someone who's doubting themselves, I actually talk about I know that feeling.
Yes.
I understand the meaning of that feeling in my muscles. Mm-hmm. So my discussion with them now is compassionate discussion, is out of understanding and is out of really patient, because I know what that feeling is. It's really awful.
Mm-hmm.
It may be different than theirs and its meaning in my heart, but I understand it in my heart. And that creates a new relationships and new compassion and new compassionate conversations, because you're more empathetic and more vulnerable, actually. And vulnerability allows people to also show their own vulnerability, and it allows people to open up. And that's the secret of getting away from loneliness to start with. Yeah. There you go.
That is all this work that you've done and all of these things, and especially the journey in compassion, I think is what makes you such not only an amazing writer and speaker, but I have been completely ensconced in your TV shows, in the shows, in the project, the Zainab Salbi project, and in particular, the subject matters are so engaging and they soak you right in. But the way that you interview and the way that you speak with people and the way that you draw them out is really extraordinary and just not only inspiring, but that ability to just go right in with them and also to draw them out. Are there future plans for the project? What's next?
There is. And you know what I really encourage people is to actually check out the hashtag #MeTooNow1 series that I did on PBS, because it's sort of relevant for all of us as we are talking about these issues. And my proudest work is an episode where I talked to a woman who accused a man of groping her in a dancing floor as they were friends, and the man who got accused, and how he dealt with it and how she dealt with it. And, you know, and the reason I say it's my proudest work, because we are in a time in which we're just shouting angry slogans at each other and painful and all of these things. And here, people who went through their journey. I mean, it was very painful for both of them. And, you know, he denied first for 10 years. And then she asked herself, like, I have to liberate myself from my anger and bitterness. And I really need to understand what is restorative justice really means. And then he moved from denial to getting fired and having to ask himself, well, why did I do this? And really was forced to look into himself, at his own insecurity and jealousy of other men and all of that. And so the whole point is that by compassionate understanding, we actually can get, you know, for the first time, true dialogue and true conversation between an issue that is impacting most of us, you know, hashtag Me Too. And how do we do that? And the only way you can actually hear his story is to, I don't necessarily agree with him or don't agree with him. Like, it's just hear the person. The only way a person can tell you their truth is if you actually create a safe place for them to speak without judgment. Sometimes they are not aware of themselves. Sometimes they are aware of themselves, but you still want to get their truth. Right. So you can actually understand how to deal with it. And same with her. So it's sort of being able to listen without judgment, but it doesn't mean not agreeing or agreeing. It's just giving the person the space and the respect to speak truthfully about their truth, so you can engage in a dialogue from there. But this shouting and blaming, you did it, not me too, all of us, well, politics is doing this. Yeah. We're crossing each other and not hearing each other. And we need to evolve that into a listening and hearing of each other.
Right. And that show is hashtag Me Too What's Next. And it's
now what?
Oh, sorry, Now What? Yeah. And sorry. And it's available online. I've seen a few of the episodes online. And is it ongoing right now?
It's not. There is a new, is to come in January of next year. So follow me on Twitter or Instagram and you'll see what's coming up next. It's a surprise.
Oh, great. Well, I can't wait. Well, that's right. We definitely want to make sure everybody's aware of that you can absolutely follow Zainab on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook page as well, and your website as well to find out all of what's coming up. One more musical snippet from this great Women's World album, and I think we're going to do Mina Neguiha, and that's the title of the song, and it's by Sibel, and this is again Women's World, and you're listening to KSU Thunder 91.1.
Minha neguinha, o meu café ficou tão sozinho. Os meninos que passam eu olho sem ter pra quem mostrar. Oh, minha linda, minha neguinha, histórias que eu conto no vento. Eu me sento aqui pra ladainha. Eu me sento aqui avoadinha. Eu guardo no bolso as histórias da dona Sinha. Mas me falta tu mesmo e teu jeito de me contar. Eu guardo no bolso da dona Sinha. histórias que tu me traz, e as flores começam a girar. Guardo no bolso as histórias da dona Sinhá. Mas me falta tu mesmo e teu jeito de me contar. Guardo no bolso da dona Sinhá, histórias que tu me traz e as flores começam a girar.
Okay, welcome back. Well, that artist was Sibel, and the song is called Mina, Minha, and Neguina, Neguinha. And this is the Apex Hour. You're listening to KSUU Thunder 91.1. We're in the studio finishing out our show with Zainab Salbi. I don't want to let you go. I want to keep you for longer. And we have our last little question.
Keep me.
I'd love to show you the fall colors we have here in Southern Utah. Next time for sure.
I'd like to.
We have our last little question that we ask all of our guests, which is, what's turning you on this week? What's turning you on right now? And it can be anything. It's just kind of our last little personal little thing that maybe you're really excited about right now.
I'm excited about going and hearing the performance of an album called Musician of the in the name of Desert Rose. It's a South African musician who are coming to New York, California, and touring the States. And I have to say I'm proud of being part of bringing them here, but because they sing sacred music and from all around the world. And I was passing by somewhere and they were singing sacred music from Islam. And I grew up a Muslim and I am still a Muslim. And I realized wow, Islam is nowadays known as being awful, oppressive, terrorism, all of these things. And that whatever they were singing, Yusuf Ghanis is the name of the guy, was just so profoundly beautiful and made me cry because it showed the beauty of an essence that I am familiar with. So I'm really excited. I'm really into it. And Desert Rose Remembrance is my favorite album by them. So,
okay, so Desert Rose Remembrance. I'm going to check that out because I'm not familiar with them. So, well, that's the end of our time together. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this hour with me.
What a pleasure. I loved it. Thank you.
Yay. And I can't wait to have you back again. And with that, we will say goodbye from the Apex Hour again in KSU Thunder 91.1. And thank you again for being here and have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much for listening to the Apex Hour here on KSUU Thunder 91.1. Come find us again next Thursday at 3 p.m. for more conversations with the visiting guests at Southern Utah University and new music to discover for your next playlist. And in the meantime, we would love to see you at our events on campus. To find out more, check out suu.edu/apex. Until next week, this is Lynn Vartan saying goodbye from the Apex Hour here on Thunder 91.1.